12th, 2017. And what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to turn this over to Victor, who's going to provide an overview of the trip, and then I'm going to take you through the route and some of the specifics of what you can expect to see and where you're going to be going.
Good afternoon. This is Victor Emanuel. I've probably visited almost 100 destinations around the world, but I haven't been fortunate enough to go to Iceland. It's one of the places I'd most like to go because Iceland has it all. It's got scenery, it's got remarkable history, it's got the people, the culture of the people that live in Iceland, it's got wildflowers, it's got waterfalls, it's got volcanoes, and it has some wonderful bird and animal life. And one of the things that makes Iceland special is the fact that you can get very close to these animals and birds. You can really get to study them, which is what I like to do very much, see all the detail. And you get to see birds that you normally have seen only in the winter when they're not in their bright plumages, like, say, a common eider. You get to see it on the breeding grounds in their full summer breeding. And there's a mixture of European birds and North American birds. And there's some very, very exciting birds. We're going to have a slideshow here that will show you some of them. But I highly recommend Iceland. I do need to mention to you that because of the tremendous interest in Iceland right now, the ship that we have reserved some spaces on is now sold out. However, if you contact our office, you can be on the waiting list. There very well could be cancellations. Things happen in people's lives and they aren't able to go. And we will be operating this trip again in the future. Down the road, it's possible that Victor Emanuel Nature Tours might make a land-based trip to Iceland. We'd like to know if you're interested in such a trip. That would be in a couple of years from now. But I can't recommend Iceland highly enough. The scenery is so spectacular. The birding is wonderful. And we have this lovely ship we're going to be on. And we have David Wolf as the event leader who will be there, one of our most experienced, most renowned leaders in the history of our company, and who is a great naturalist and birder. So I hope you enjoy this webinar. I hope you'll let us know if you want to be added to the waiting list or want to go on a future Iceland trip.
Okay, thank you, Victor. Just one moment here. I'm having a little technical difficulty with my slides here. I've got to get my slides advancing here and get that going here. Okay, there we go. Not sure why it had paused there. Anyway, so what you're looking at here right now is the cruise route. And as the name implies, this is a circumnavigation, meaning that we are going to be going all the way around Iceland, which is an island nation. And you can see by the way the arrows are included in the cruise route here that we will be starting in Reykjavík, down on the west coast of the island, and then going in a clockwise direction. And we really will complete we'll make a full circuit of the island, and which is something that really makes this trip extra special because there are organizations that offer trips to Iceland, but none that we know of that offer this complete circumnavigation. So anyway, what I'm going to do as we go through the route here and we talk a little bit about what we're going to be seeing, you're going to be seeing this map pop up a lot so that you're able to follow along with what we're talking about, because these names that you're seeing on the map are not exactly easy to pronounce or to remember. And so by being able to refer to that map regularly, you'll be able to follow along. Now, as I said, we're going to be starting in Reykjavík, down on the west coast of the island. That is the capital of Iceland. And it is an interesting cultural center, but it's also the gateway to the interior of the island, and it's a perfect jumping off point. This is Thingvellir National Park. This gives a sampling or sort of representation of the spectacular scenery that there is to see in Iceland. But in particular, Gullfoss Falls is a major destination on this trip, and it offers the perfect introduction to these remarkable landscapes. Iceland is renowned for its geology, particularly its glaciers, its mountains, its volcanic features, all of which combine to offer a very unusual and very exotic series of landscapes. And after our first day, after we get together in Reykjavík, we're going to be going out and we're going to be doing a sampling of activities, including seeing landscapes such as this, but also some of the birds. And here is a representation, again, of what we're going to be seeing. Nesting eiders, such as this common eider on the lower right corner, and this redwing up on top here. And again, this is the first day, so that evening we will embark the ship, and off we will go towards our next destination. From Reykjavík, we're going to go northwest toward this peninsula that juts out on the northwestern corner of the island, and our first stops will be at Flatey Island and Látrabjarg. And you know, as we approach these this coastline, you're going to be seeing cliffs like this. This is sort of typical of parts of the Icelandic coastline, and what they hold, though, are birds. And so we will be at Vigor Island, we'll be getting off, or I'm sorry, Flatey Island, we'll be getting off and doing shore excursions. A few minutes ago, Victor had referenced seeing some of these things in breeding plumage, and here is a perfect example of that. Some of these European shorebirds, like common redshank in the lower right, common ringed plover in the top center, and additionally some more familiar birds that are familiar to North American birders, such as Arctic tern on the top left, redneck phalarope down on the bottom center, purple sandpiper up on the right, and snow bunting on the left. At the cliffs, at the Látrabjarg cliffs, we will be getting in zodiacs, and we will be cruising along these cliff faces. And this is really a nice photo here because it gives a real strong feel for what you can expect on your trip. And you know, all of this is very safe. If you've never been in a zodiac before, this is all very safe. The waters are protected, and you will be up close and personal to all these nesting birds. A good example of this is in the top right, where you're seeing this mass of murres, common murres, as well as nesting black-legged kittiwakes. Down on the lower right, you've got razorbills, which is an Atlantic specialty bird. The lower left, black guillemot, and then, of course, harlequin ducks. And, you know, being as far north as we are, Iceland is a wonderful place to see harlequin ducks in the breeding season. From Látrabjarg, we're going to continue around, making our way to farther up on the northwestern coast of the island. Our next destination will be Vigor Island and Thistilfjord, and we will be getting off here. And again, it's one of the themes that will quickly become apparent on this trip are the landscapes. These dramatic landscapes with these spectacular mountains, windswept, beautiful moorlands, all full of nesting birds. Here is an example of what we can see both on land and from zodiacs. On the top right here, we've got northern wheat ears, we've got more nesting alcids, particularly Atlantic puffin, which is featured here in the lower center photograph. This is a bird that is always high on every person's list to see on a trip like this. There's always something endearing about puffins, and this is an excellent trip to see the Atlantic puffin. Up on the top left is a northern fulmar, and the fulmars, of course, nest on these cliff faces as well. And Arctic terns also nest en masse. And so really, it's a full, like a kaleidoscope of bird life and scenery that you will be exposed to on this trip. Rounding the top of the peninsula, here is a fairly dramatic image from this same part of the country, where you've got just masses of Arctic terns set against these dramatic landscapes. And in the back, just to the right of center, you'll see a waterfall against the cliff face. All of this is heavily glaciated country. Coming around, we will be heading towards Grimsey Island. Now, I need to make a correction here. Our map, unfortunately, has a slight error in it. Grimsey Island is not in that indented bay up on the north coast there. It sits up on the Arctic Circle. And so we will be making a voyage, or the short voyage up there to Grimsey Island, to the community of Sandvik. And one of the things about this trip that's also important that I think will appeal to a number of people is that even though landscapes, nature, birds, other wildlife are important facets of this trip is also excellent for its cultural richness as well. And every day when we get off the ship, there will be opportunities to do natural history, to engage in natural history activities. But in addition, you will have opportunities to learn about Icelandic history, as well as visit fishing villages and attend cultural events and so on. But looking at this map, we're going to be going up to Grimsey Island, again, which is on the Arctic Circle. That will be a big deal for people to have a chance to hit the Arctic Circle. And then we're going to drop down to Thistilfjord, back on the north central coast here. And, you know, here we are with a group out looking at birds and wildflowers on the coast here. You know, because this trip is going to be in early June, this is going to be an excellent time to see wildflowers. This is the start of the boreal summer, and so the wildflowers should be in full display. And here again, another sampling of the wildlife that you might expect to see. Eurasian oystercatcher in the top right, your European golden plover in the bottom center, but also whales. And we do have chances for 3 or 4 types of whales. And as we make our way around the island on these near-shore waters, we almost certainly will have a chance to do that. There are humpback whales, there are orcas, there are fin whales and sei whales, a lot of possibilities here. And again, I come back to some of these cliff nesting birds, because this is a theme of this trip. And you know, if anybody who's listening to this has ever been to Alaska, and you have seen the big cliffs up there in the Pribilof Islands or other places where you get these concentrations of nesting alcids, the North Atlantic in the summertime is equally renowned. And here again, we're looking at kittiwakes in the top left. There's a real attractive shot on the bottom left there of puffins, a razorbill in the center, and then off to the right, we have a thick-billed murre. So again, this area is an excellent place to see these Atlantic nesting alcids. And then on shore, you know, we'll have opportunities to see, you know, nesting birds. And so this little guy here is just is an example of what you may encounter. And as I referenced a minute ago, there are some cultural aspects to this trip that I think that people will find appealing. Iceland is famous for its fishing villages, many of which are centuries old. And, you know, these are really quite charming and quaint places, well maintained. And so for people that have that interest, you'll be able to tour some of these towns and meet some of the local fishermen and folklorists also. And, you know, again, some of our travelers really enjoy this type of thing, which is another reason why we really like doing these trips with Zegrahm expeditions, because one of the things that we come across from time to time is that we will have a couple who wants to travel, and maybe one of them is more nature or bird oriented and the other is not. And so the beautiful thing about a trip like this is that you can do as much nature as you want, but there's also other things, there are other activities to engage in. And here we have a black-headed gull up on the right and an orca down on the lower right to sort of affirm what I was telling you about the chances to see whales and so on. And this gull is the common nesting bird throughout the area. Back on board, we will be continuing across the north side of the island. And from Thistilfjord, we're going to be making our way down into this fjord right in almost in the very center at the top, called Akureyri. And from there, we will spend a day inland traveling to Lake Mývatn and then up to Húsavík. And at this point, when we disembark the ship in the morning, it will continue around to Húsavík, and we will re-embark later in the day. And you know, I like this particular image because it gives you an idea again about some of the geologic features of Iceland, including bubbling pools, mud paddies, and so on, and geysers and other geothermal features. And of course, this area is also excellent for scenery and birds. You can see this crater up here on the top left, and then down on the lower left, there's this beautiful waterfall here. And this is all part of this day's activities. whooper swan, which is a nesting species here down in the center. And then up on the top right, this is a bird that many of you from North America here, many of our North American travelers will recognize as a breeding plumage horned grebe, which also occurs in Iceland, but goes by the name Slavonian grebe, and an immature snow bunting on the lower right. So a real exciting day in the field, landscapes, history and culture for those who want, and of course, nesting birds. Doesn't get any better than that. From here, we will then make our way over toward the eastern side of the island. And here we're looking at Thistilfjord Bay up in the far northeast corner of Iceland, which will be the day's destination. And you know, you see these offshore rocks, these stacks, many of which are sites for nesting birds. And you know, either you know, through our travels on the ship or off the ship in zodiacs, you will have numbers of opportunities to explore these secluded, often deserted areas. And again, because cliff nesting birds are a theme of this trip, I included some other images such as these fulmars up on the top left, and then all these Atlantic puffins at a colony down on the lower left. And then on the right side, of course, common loon, which is known as a diver in Europe. A common loon occurs, and off the ship, we ought to be able to see this beautiful breeding plumage common loon, another black-headed gull up on the top right, and then a black guillemot in the lower in the center, what appears to be a young bird here. From here, we will continue down the eastern side of the island to Thistilfjord. And on this stop, again, being along the coast, I wanted to provide some imagery for you here so you can get another feel for Iceland, essentially uninhabited. This really is an expedition of sorts, in the sense that you will be going places that either are totally uninhabited or that very seldom are visited by other travelers. So it's a real treat to have a chance to do that. And here we will be making a stop and working off the zodiacs. We'll be making shore excursions. Here is just a representation of what you might see. Things like nesting black-tailed godwit, this beautiful male harlequin duck, and of course falls. Waterfalls and cascades are a big feature of the Icelandic landscape, and this trip promises plenty. Coming down and around, I believe our next stop is going to be at Djúpivogur, and from there we will then work our way down around to the south part of the island. And here at Djúpivogur, this is where we will have a chance to get up close and personal with some of the glaciers, some of the remnant snow. And if you take a look here in the lower left, here you'll see barnacle geese, and this is a bird that we will be seeking on this trip. They are a widespread nesting species. But then also on the lower right, if you take a look at this braided glacial outwash way here, you can see where water has flowed out, and it imparts a sense of vastness, really. Again, uninhabited, beautiful landscapes. Up on the top left, I don't believe we'll be traveling in that type of a craft. We will be in zodiacs. But again, though, the purpose of this is to show you just how close you will get to some of the ice features. Coming around the south side of the island, we will be visiting Heimaey Island and Surtsey Island off the south central side of the island. And again, more cliffs, more seabird nesting cliffs. And you can see what they like, these grottos here that are etched into the rock face. Again, zodiac cruising, shore excursions will bring you up close to sites like this. Northern gannets, Atlantic puffins. Here we have snipe in the bottom left. And really, this trip it promises so much for those who value not just being in nature and seeing it, but seeing it well, being in close proximity to this wildlife. We will be coming back to Reykjavík, where the trip began. And if you've been wondering or are wondering what your vessel would look like, those who take this trip will be on the Ocean Diamond, which is a beautiful ship Here you can see the full ship on the left, and on the right side, here's an example of the ship's public area, a passenger lounge on the right, and then down low on the lower right, here's an example of one of the staterooms. And for this trip, the ship holds 200 people, but will be limited to 175. And for the types of activities that we will be doing on this trip, this is a perfect size vessel. You know, oftentimes on these adventure cruise ships, the ship size that we use is anywhere from 100 to 120 passengers. But there are some exceptions to that, like where the destination easily accommodates more than that. And so we will be traveling aboard the 175 guest Ocean Diamond. Leading this trip, as Victor mentioned, will be David Wolf, a longtime Vent leader. David will be leading 3 trips for us next year, 3 cruises, Vent Zegrahm departures. And we're really looking forward to this. You can see cabins were priced to begin at $89.80. As Victor mentioned, we'll see if we can get more space. But if you have any questions about this trip here in our office, I encourage you to contact us and speak to Greg Lopez or Patrick Swaggerty.
And let me take this opportunity to mention, if you aren't able to get on this trip but want to be up in the northern hemisphere, with Zegrahm we have a wonderful Wild Alaska tour that will cover a lot of the Bering Sea, which has many of these same birds, plus albatross and a lot of other great things. So if you can't get on the Iceland trip, check out our Wild Alaska cruise, which you can see on our website.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us, and we will see if we have any questions.
Doesn't look like we have any questions yet, but if anybody has any, please feel free to just type them into the pane and we can go through them quickly. All right. It sounds like your guys' presentation was so thorough that nobody has any questions, but feel free to contact Victor and Emanuel with any. Oh, actually, here we have one. Could you please comment on any physical requirements for participants, particularly for shore excursions?
Yes. You know, the landings will be varied. Some will be in a Zodiac, and so for that reason, we do encourage people to bring rubber boots that will come up to your, you know, higher up on your calf or to the knee, because we will be walking in shallow surf. A few of our landings, but in general, is not what you would consider to be.
And let me add that on these trips I've done many with good, helping people into the Zodiac and the Zodiac. Have to be in to do this kind of trip. It's appropriate for people, and as long as they can walk and get around a little bit, and the walking will be on paths and flat areas, no steep areas. So this is a very appropriate trip for people who have limited physical abilities and want that kind of trip.
Absolutely.
Great. Looks like there's another question. Did you say there is a waiting list?
Well, at this point, anybody, we have a waiting list that we are prepared to start. Anybody who joined it would be the first people on it. And also, you know, because space could open up at any time. So if anybody is interested in this trip, we would encourage you to contact us and be included on the waiting list.
So we're just starting the waiting list today. As Barry said, if you contact our office, and you have our contact information, obviously, by email or phone, you would be the first people on the waiting list. And we find, you know, with 175 people on this trip, things do happen in people's lives. Things come up where they aren't able to go, and space does open up. We can't guarantee it, but there's a chance.
Great. Speaking of the size of the ship, with 175 guests, how do you divide the groups for shore excursions, and what is the maximum size for the groups?
Well, you know, multiple zodiacs, of course, are deployed. So it's, first of all, so it's not like, you know, everybody is, for anybody who might not be familiar with this type of travel, the first thing I would say is that multiple zodiacs are deployed to get everybody on shore as quickly as possible. It may all depend on what the destination is and what the excursions are. So, for example, if it's a destination for the day that might include cultural activities, that may include birding activities, the group will automatically separate out like that. We will have buses on shore, I believe, and again, because Iceland is such a wide open area, for the birding excursions, people should not expect to be walking on narrow trails, you know, in single file line, one after another. It's very easy to spread out. In terms of the exact numbers, I'm not sure, Adrian, but generally smaller groups.
Well, and generally 10 to 12 people go in a zodiac. I believe Vent has 14 people on this trip, so they couldn't all get probably in one zodiac. But our leader will wait on shore typically until all the Vent clients have disembarked, and those that want to walk around with him can join him on a walk. But there are other naturalists on the ship that are excellent too. So you can go with David Wolf, you can go with one of the other naturalists, or as Barry said, some people will choose to do a cultural part of the trip.
Great, and I believe you just answered the next question, which says, I also assume that each group has a birding guide.
Yeah, and you know, what we also make every effort to keep the Vent travelers together. There are some situations where that is not always possible. However, generally speaking, we are able to do that. And so the Vent people will always be with David Wolf, and also the ship, the Zegrahm staff will have a bird expert among their experts on board.
And let me also add that one thing that we think is important is that David Wolf will be on deck a lot of the time. Obviously, he takes time off for eating and other things, but he'll be on the deck a lot, where bird people who are part of the Vent tour or other bird people can hang around David, and he'll be identifying birds that fly by.
Great. Well, that looks like all the questions, unless anybody else has anything that they'd like to ask at this time. Nope. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you in Iceland or Alaska or South Antarctic of New Zealand. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.